Sometimes the hardest thing to accept is that the change you are trying to create in your life comes down to a few small, kind of tweaks. Hi, my name is Amy Nicole, and these are my thoughts on small tweaks that create really big changes in your life. And I am trying to do this a little bit differently. I've only got 2 videos under my belt. This is the 3rd one, and the last 2 I created notes for myself, and I am happy with how that turned out, but I am going to just try to wing it a little bit more and just talk, and hopefully I don't start rambling on and on. So if this video ends up being longer than ideal, then I guess we'll go back to making notes and doing a bunch of editing. So today I want to talk about small tweaks because I have noticed, and it's one of those things that I've kind of noticed over time here and there, but this year I've really specifically noticed in different areas of my life that if I could just make a small change, like, if my house is a mess, it really comes down to, like, when I sit down and I look at my messy house, it pretty much all comes down to just a few small changes that if I could make those changes, the house would be clean. And, let's go back to a specific story. So I was talking with my mom a week or 2 ago, and I don't remember what brought this up, but there was a specific thing in my life, which was that I tend to have really bad back pain, that my back will be fine for a really long time, and then I'll tweak it, or I'll bend down, not even in a weird way. I'll just bend down to pick something up, and then I stand up and I've tweaked it, and then it's bad for a few days, and to the point that I can hardly bend over or do anything. And so I've gone to physiotherapy for this, and it is, it's almost frustrating how simple, she'll help me out with it, and then she'll send me home with a few simple exercises to do. Super simple, right? And yet I go home and I don't do those exercises. And I don't know why, but I think, as I've sat with it a little bit and just, I realize that I simply don't believe that my back pain, which is so intense and so bad when it happens, that it could be solved by such simple stretches. And it's basically you stretch your each leg back and you stretch it forward. It's like the most basic of exercises. And I don't do it because I refuse to believe. And as I talk about it, I'm like, I know that it works. And when I talk to my physiotherapist about it, I'm talking to her and I know that it works. And yet I have such a hard time in the day-to-day believing that I could actually clear up my back pain from those stretches. And of course you have to do just different strength exercises as well. But the specific pain that I get it basically just happens because of certain type muscles. And I really struggle to believe, again, I know I've said this, but this is kind of the main point, is that I don't want to believe, so it's kind of in my mind, and I think for a lot of us, and in a lot of our minds in a lot of areas of life, if we've been struggling with something and it's been really intense and really big, whether, your house is just always messy and you don't know why, or you really want to do your life's work, you know what it is, and you really want to do it, but it's just been that thing that for years or for decades you haven't been able to do, or for me, where you have really intense back pain at times, and you get these this simple solution, and yet it's almost like if the problem is really big, then it feels like the solution also has to be really big. And I think that's where we get really stuck, because for most of us, the solution or the next thing that you need to do is actually really small. And it's really, to me, that's just frustrating, right? Because it's if I've struggled with something for a decade, I just feel like it needs a really big solution. And then I end up almost overcomplicating things because I'm looking for that big, either I overcomplicate or I do nothing because I feel like it has to be this big thing. And so this year in 2025, as I've been realizing this in myself, I've just realized how much, I've been noticing that I'm looking for big solutions, and it's causing me to not create the change I want to make. And I also realizing that pretty much any change that I've ever successfully made in my life, or, if I see something in someone else's life that they're working on, really like successful change comes down to really tiny shifts and tweaks. So one example is that if my home it's not ever like, okay, it's rarely ever a huge mess, but it's always that consistent mess, right? Like that it's consistently kind of just messy in the same ways. So then if I sit down and I think about it and identify it, then it's something that like where every day, because we have supper typically every day, then a small tweak that I could make would be to just make sure that right after supper, we clean the kitchen and wash the dishes. For some of you, that's already a duh, and like, what else would you do? And yet it's just easy to delay it or not do it, or, say, well, we'll clean it half clean it and then finish it tomorrow. So a small tweak would just be, it's instead of trying to put all this effort out every single day, it's just make a small little change, and like the change that specifically with that I've been trying to make is just fill the sink with soapy water before supper and already start washing the dishes. And it just kind of gets the whole process going in a really smooth and simple way, and where it ends up taking less time to clean up. So that's one example. Another one is, okay, so if my car, I don't know if you can see this, I'm just holding up my phone because that's where I keep my notes. All right, so if my car is a mess after every city trip that I make, because we live out of the country, so out in the country, so it's a trip to the city. So if my car is always a mess, which it always is, a simple tweak that I can make, like I don't have to accept that no matter what, my car's just going to be a mess. Because the simple tweak that I can make is, if I'm already making, 3 or 4 trips to get the groceries into the house after a city trip, all I have to do is make one more trip with a container of some kind to clean up the rest of the mess, like to grab any receipts or any garbage, or just put things back in its place. So, if I'm already making 3 trips, just make one more and it would solve the messy car problem. Because anyone who has a messy car knows that it's good when a car functions. And I love it when my car is clean and functions, and it just takes a small little change. So that is example number 2. Number 3. Okay, so right now my world is YouTube videos, and as I'm creating YouTube videos, I realize that I'm struggling, or at times, like, it's weird because in one way the process has gotten very easy, but in other ways I realize that I'm trying to be too efficient without giving myself time to learn. So if I just allow myself the time that I need to learn the process, then once I've learned it, I can become more efficient. But just a small change of just saying, if one day the whole process for each video might take me 3 to 4 hours, and right now if it takes me 6 to 7 hours per video, that's okay. So, okay, so now I've got 4 points for you. And let me know in the comments. This is my 3rd video, so who knows how many people are actually going to watch this, but I am curious in the comments if you have watched one of my first 2 videos, if you like me creating my notes and like just being more efficient with what I say, or if you like more the raw, unedited version of me and my thoughts. All right, so point number 1 is that your stuck spots, like where you get stuck, is unique to you. So for me, I could look at my own life and like the examples I gave, I get stuck in a messy kitchen, with a messy car, and with YouTube videos. For the next person, it's going to be something totally different. Like not hugely significantly, but the things that I need to tweak are very different than the things that you need to tweak. And I think that brings me to point number 2. Nope, never mind. Anyway, so point number 1 is that where you're stuck is unique to you. So just pay attention, because you could listen. I could give a ton of examples from my own life, but it really helps if you just look at yours, and maybe it helps to write it down. Just look at your life. Oh, yes. No, this brings me to point number 4. Okay, so this is where I'm going to be all over the map. All right, I'll come back to point number 4. So point number 2 is just refuse to be unsolvable. This will be a whole nother episode at some other time. But sometimes where we're stuck, again, you know how at the beginning I was talking about how when we have really big problems, then we often look for really big solutions, and then we almost get stuck in that. And when your success could come down to a few small minor tweaks and that can turn into habits, and then all of a sudden the thing that was hard now becomes easy. And it really helps just to decide to just refuse to be unsolvable. Refuse to get stuck in making this such a big thing that you're always coming up with excuses as to why you have to continue to be stuck. Just solve the next problem, which brings me to, oh, nope. Apparently I'm not aware of my points. I was going to say that brings me to point number 3, but one sec. I will edit this part out because I need to read this. Okay, no, I'm sorry to disappoint. I think I had a thought in my head that was point number 4. Apparently, I thought I had way too many thoughts on point number 4. Okay, if I remember it, we'll turn it into another video. Okay, so point number 3 is that I remember hearing, this isn't really a point, this is just sort of a thought that I wanted to add. But I remember hearing years ago that if people would eat, I think it was half a cup, maybe as small as a quarter cup. Don't quote me on this. Because I'm awful at remembering details, but I do remember the point that was if people would just eat somewhere between a quarter cup to half a cup of vegetables a day, if they would just increase their vegetable intake, then most sicknesses and just ailments would pretty much be gone. And it really that really struck me, because it's okay, if our health could change with such a tiny, simple tweak in our diet, then why wouldn't we do it, right? But I think sometimes we feel well, if we're not feeling well, just exercising or moving a 5 or 10 minutes more than what you typically do, that will make a huge difference for you. Or for me, if I do the stretches that my physiotherapist tells me to do, then I will notice a huge difference in my life, and I don't have to be paranoid about putting my back out and then not being able to do anything for 3 or 4 days. The change that we want to see often comes through really small changes done consistently. Okay, so point number 4, which I'm not sure if I'm going to cover the thing that I was going to say I was going to cover after point number 1. I apologize. I am all over the place and will keep practicing making good notes. Okay, so point number 4 is if you're wondering where to start, simply start with the thing that's bothering you the most. What's that thing that is right in front of you? And don't worry about trying to change and edit your life all over the place. Just start with the thing that is bugging you the most. And that is all. I'm going to stop there before I end up recording or blabbing on and wishing I had turned that into a whole different video. So wherever, just start with the thing that is bugging you most. Grab a piece of paper if you need to and write it down. Write down a few different tweak ideas and then just pick one and run with it. And if it doesn't work, then go back to the drawing board or your notepad and write it down, or just solve it again and keep on solving it until you get the desired result. And that is all. Thank you for watching, and talk to you next time. Hi, my name is Amy Nicole, and these are my thoughts on what?